So we have been talking about the 15 Shīlas now. Not quite for 15 weeks. Some of these we skipped over, like if they were kind of, you know, uh, like very straightforward, didn't need much explanation. Um, so I'm trying to think which ones we skipped over. Like we lumped together number 3 and number 5, perpetual restraint on behavior and temper with all around self restraint. We're skipping number 14 and going right to number 15. Number 14 was obedience to the structural code of discipline. So that one is, it has to do, we're not really skipping it, we're actually tying it together with number 15, which is sense of responsibility. So, so then a structural code of discipline could involve having a strong sense of responsibility. But let's go over all 15, and then we will continue talking about this last point. The first one was forgiveness, magnanimity of mind, perpetual restraint on behavior and temper. And as I read these, reflect on how practicing these could really change your life. Number 4, readiness to sacrifice everything of individual life for ideology, all around self restraint, sweet and smiling behavior, moral courage, setting an example by individual conduct before asking anybody to do the same, keeping aloof from criticizing others, condemning others, mudslinging, and all sorts of groupisms, adherence to the principles of yama and niyama. Due to carelessness, yama and niyama are the 10 ethical guidelines of yoga. Due to carelessness, if any mistake had been committed unknowingly or unconsciously, that should be knowingly or unconsciously, one must admit it immediately and ask for punishment, or just ask what you can do to make up for it. 12. Even while dealing with a person of inimical nature, one must keep oneself free from hatred, anger, and vanity. 13. Keeping aloof from talkativeness. And then 14 was obedience to a structural code of discipline. 15, sense of responsibility. Okay, so then let's begin with a story as we talk about what it means to have a sense of responsibility. So there was once a family of the two parents and a young child, maybe 4 or 5 years old, and the grandfather that lived with them, the father's father. And over time, the grandfather, he developed an illness in which he could not control his body. His food was spilling on the floor. He would break the plates, break the glasses. And the parents got really annoyed at this. And they had a talk one night and say, we need to do something about grandfather. He is messing things up. So they got really frustrated and they made a small table for him in the corner of the room. And since he was breaking the plates, they gave him his food in this wooden bowl. And they felt happier. Oh yes, now we don't have to deal with all this mess. Less things are getting dirty on the table. And the child was just... Actually, what happened was that the grandfather, while he was there in the corner, he started weeping. And the parents just ignored it because, well, that was the right decision. You had to remove him. And the child observed all of this in silence. One day, the father was walking around the yard, and the child was playing with some wood chips, putting them together. And in a very sweet voice, the father said, "My son, what are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm making a bowl. I'm making a bowl for you and mother. For when I'm older, I'll give you your food in this bowl." And so the father then realized, wait, what? Suddenly realized what he was doing. Maybe realizing the example that he was setting to his son, the precedent that he was setting, and realizing that if I treat my father this way, maybe one day my son will treat me this way. And so the father realized that the family realized they had to make a change, and they brought the grandfather back into the table and suddenly no longer cared about things getting dirty and things breaking. And the grandfather was happy. So, what I'd like to ask you is to start thinking right now, who's the real victim in this story? Is it the grandfather? Is it the child? Is it the parents? I'll give you a few moments to answer that. And while you're writing that, I'll just mention a couple more things. In many ways, this story embodies having a sense of responsibility. We could state the obvious that the father was giving an example to his child, the young boy, and in that way was being irresponsible, demonstrating this kind of cruelty. And so sometimes responsibility has to do with being responsible enough that your behavior is not going to negatively influence other people. It's just one take, but I'd like to hear your comments before we look at responsibility a little further. So I'll go now to the chat, and hopefully you've had some time to answer. Who is the real victim here? I see here that, let's see, there's a few comments here. Noelia says, Oriole. So that's the name of the cat. It's very hot and dry in San Diego where I am. Oh, I would love to be in San Diego. Such a beautiful, beautiful place. And Christina says, that's a cute name. Oriole. Yep, that's a nice name. And Karen says, as always, a sweet and beautiful meditation. Okay, good. I'm glad you liked it, Karen. So Jefferson here, Hitendra is saying, the victim is the corner, the table, and the bowl that are used as the means of punishment. Ah, that's nice. Yeah. I mean, in the sense that everything that we see, that's one of the things that we believe in Tantra. Everything is an expression of the supreme consciousness. Everything has consciousness. Everything has energy. So even that bowl has consciousness, is consciousness. And yes, that poor bowl is being weaponized. Being weaponized against the grandfather, right? So, okay, so we have some very innocent victims there. Thank you, Hitendra. I see that Mridula joined us from India. Namaskar. So good to be back. It's so good to have you back. Thank you, sister, for joining us. Some people say that the victim of the story is the grandfather because, well, he's the one that's punished, or he's the one that's crying, that's being excluded. But maybe the victim is also the father. Because is it possible that the father behaved that way toward the grandfather because the grandfather taught him to be that way? Maybe the grandfather was cruel toward the father. And so then he grows up to be cruel to his father. Some might say that the victim is the child because now the child has learned to normalize this type of cruelty. Hence why he thinks it's normal to build a wooden bowl and then feed his parents from that later. So it's kind of hard you could look at it from those different perspectives and see everybody as a victim. And that's where sense of responsibility comes in. Because when parents are not responsible for the emotional well-being of children, giving them time, giving them physical attention, mental attention, spiritual attention, then the children can go astray. Children can be molded to be very selfish. And parents struggle with inculcating a sense of responsibility to their children. How can my children learn to be responsible? Even later in life, you have children that, can never stand on their own 2 feet fully. They're always dependent on mom and dad. Mom and dad is paying all their bills. Mom and dad is bailing them out of jail, bailing them out in court fines. Mom and dad is buying them another car, even though 2 cars were totaled. If mom and dad can afford all of that, right? So sometimes parents do a disservice to their grown children or to children when they don't let them develop that personal sense of responsibility, which can harm the children. And Lisa says the child. Thank you, Lisa. Can you please tell us more why you think the child is the victim in the story? Okay? So this sense of responsibility is something that hopefully can be learned earlier on, and it's actually so broad. It covers so much. That's why even this story, although it's not directly about responsibility, you can see how responsibility plays a role there. Because responsibility plays a role in so many areas of life in order to make life better, to make oneself better. I want to show you this poem that you may have read, a famous poem written in the 70s by a woman who I believe she was a psychologist. Her name was, I think it was Dorothy Law Noit. And here it's kind of paraphrased. It's not the full poem, but it's called Children Learn What They Live. If children live with criticism, they learn to condemn. If children live with hostility, they learn to fight. If children live with ridicule, they learn to be shy. If children live with shame, they learn to feel guilty. If children live with tolerance, they learn to be patient. If children live with encouragement, they learn confidence. If children live with praise, they learn to appreciate. If children live with fairness, they learn justice. If children live with security, they learn to have faith. If children live with approval, they learn to like themselves. If children live with acceptance and friendship, they learn to find love in the world. So we have a responsibility. Yeah, it's a clear indicator there. A responsibility toward others, especially toward our children, if we're parents. And you know, when children are born, when babies are born, what they do is learn. That's just what they do. So one of our natural qualities as human beings is expansion. And as they learn, they expand their minds. They learn a new word, the mind expands. They learn a new way to deal with a situation, mind expands. And of course, mind can also contract. When you think that one thing is the absolute thing, and so mind can contract there. You learn to be selfish, boom, you contract. You learn to have envy, and you're fixated on something. Your mind is contracting. So, ideally, the mind, it's like elastic. It can expand to an infinite capacity, but it can also contract. So, our dharma is actually to expand. And so part of that expansion also has to do with expanding our love, expanding our heart. And that helps to develop a sense of responsibility. If I love my children, if I love my community, if I love people, if I love the Supreme, and I see everything as an expression of the Supreme, then I feel responsible toward everything. Many yoga traditions, some yoga traditions, they will say that, and some spiritual traditions will say that this universe is an illusion, that everything is an illusion. So that means great, then nothing really matters. I'll just do me. But we believe that everything is an expression of that supreme entity whom we love and are trying to be one with. And so then now, if everything is that, then I have to treat everything with respect. I have to treat everything with care. I have a sense of responsibility toward everything, toward everybody, toward all situations. If somebody lets me borrow a book, I will do my best to return the book. If somebody if somebody is suffering, most will say, well, it's not my job to help her, help him. But when we have a sense of responsibility, we say, that is the supreme consciousness suffering. Maybe I can do something. Maybe I can help. Maybe now I am responsible. I can make myself responsible to the degree of my capacity. Service, a sense of responsibility toward others is dependent on the degree of your capacity. So you don't feel bad too if you can't do everything that you would like to do for another person. You do what is within your capacity. So let's see here. I see that let's see, we're over here on Facebook. So Shannon said they are all victims because they are all one. Yeah, they were all victims to that situation. The child was learning the wrong thing. The parents were being cruel, and now somebody was going to kick their butt when they were older, their child, and of course the grandfather. And you know what? When you say they are all one, I really like that, because it reminds me of something that Thich Nhat Hanh Vietnamese Buddhist monk said. He says, for example, all the children, they come from their parents. Okay? So it means you are of the same genetic material. Okay? And if your child is not well, the parent is not well. And if the parent is not well, the child is not well. And what it really means is that if you are not well, I am not well. Because we are one. If you live if you go to work and you live in this dysfunctional work community where in the meetings, the people who speak the loudest get rewarded with the most attention, and the manager is not looking around the room and saying, "Hey, Jill, so you didn't say much today in the meeting. What do you think about the situation?" And then Jill has an opportunity to speak. Now Jill feels cared for, heard, included. And when we're in a situation like that, let's say with these coworkers, if one person doesn't feel like they're a part of the group, they're going to suffer because that group is one. And so we should always do our best. Even when you are meeting people for the first time, now you've become a little group. So that group is now a one unit. And so then everything that happens within the unit is going to affect the whole. So you're right, that family is one. They are a family unit. And if one person is not doing well, then it's going to affect everybody else. That's why we should do our best to our capacity to feel responsible toward those around us in helping them. Do they feel heard? Do they feel loved? Do they feel like they are being included? Then Lisa says, children must have guidance of what responsibility looks like through example and experience through their caregivers. Absolutely. Exactly. Because we don't know. I agree with that responsibility is socialized. When the parents treat animals with cruelty, then children learn to do the same. When they learn to treat certain groups of people with contempt, children learn the same thing. So children learn responsibility. It's mirrored. Thank you, Lisa. Let's see, Christina says, well, Karen first says, she said, they all became victims to a thought process that didn't include a loving solution rather than just a practical solution. Yeah, it may have seemed practical to remove the grandfather, but it wasn't loving. So responsibility there comes into place. Can I do something with the most love? Responsibility has to do with that, Can I be as loving as possible? Can I be as fair as possible? So there are so many, it's such a broad topic, like we said, and there really are so many subcomponents to what it means to be responsible. It means to be fair. It means to be loving. Not just practical, like Karen says. So thank you, Karen. Christina says, this morning I was writing a fiction villain and contemplated the notion you put forward earlier. Are people who were raised poorly also victims? I tend to think the answer is yes, but it's part of our journey to learn responsibility. I believe it can take lifetimes to learn that. Great segue here, Christina, for another point of focus. Now, so many of us are victims to our past. And so many of us, like the children whose parents were always there to cover for them, now have to learn responsibility on their own. Because you know what? Some parents will never, ever let their children be responsible for those, or maybe it will take even years later for that to happen, you know. So then at some point, then that young person will have to say, well, I didn't learn much personal responsibility. I didn't learn to develop a sense of responsibility, so I have to do it for myself. And although Christina says it could take lifetimes to learn that, yes, I agree. Um, at some point, it can happen. At some point, we learn to be more dependable toward the people we love, more reliable. We learn to um, do what we said we would do. You know, um, and uh, and and then people see us as responsible. You know, sometimes we have appointments that we want to keep purely for the notion of being responsible, and we make sure that we try to do it on time and well because of a sense of responsibility. So this sense of responsibility also is a lot like having a sense of care. I care enough about that person to be there on time. I care enough about that person to put more to um you know to do a job well. I feel responsible for the group's well-being, so I care. I care to be in a good mood when I'm speaking to those people and be respectful because I have a sense of responsibility to create a better atmosphere in this situation. So it is part of our journey to learn responsibility, you know, and sometimes we have uh, lack of accountability to ourselves, lack of responsibility with ourselves. We make the same mistakes over and over again. We don't take care of ourselves well enough. We're not personally responsible of our own well-being. And that can be very painful. But things get more complicated when we have less responsibility toward others. Then more drama can come into our life because now we have conflict with others. We're clashing with other people. So it's good to develop this sense of personal responsibility and then this sense of responsibility toward others, my commitments, my actions. So let's see here. We have a comment from Jayati, also known as Jennifer. She says, both the father and the child are the victim because they are repeating a cycle of what they learned from their parents. Like what you said earlier, if the grandfather treated the son with judgments, then the father will relay the same judgments to the child and back to the grandfather. The child is not learning how to take responsibility in a property due to the father not knowing how to solve a problem with compassion. So the child is not learning how to take responsibility properly. Yes, thank you, Jayati. Definitely. We see then how when we are in a position of responsibility, we have to behave appropriately. You know, sometimes there's a lack of responsibility in the sense that, let's say, parents are in the car and somebody cuts you off on the road, and parents saying, "You mother effer," and the child is there going, "Yeah, that person is a mother effer. Yeah, cut you off, Dad. Cut you off, Mom. That person is an a-hole." So in that moment, the parent is not modeling, it's not being responsible, it's not modeling the right behavior. And those are very obvious examples, right, of how we need to have personal, how we're responsible toward others, like Jayati is saying here, parents to children. But in a way, whatever we do in public, whatever we do with others, gives those people permission to do the same thing. So if we can be our best self, then we can um, we are good responsible members of the society. You know, good responsible members of our communities. Okay, so thank you everybody. I really appreciate your comments. Feel free to write more. I'm going to go ahead and move on now to some announcements and we will close. Um, Now, yes, I am a spiritual life coach, and I invite you to contact me for life coaching if this is something you've been looking for. Somebody to help you have a better relationship with yourself through overcoming obstacles, through helping you identify what is your higher purpose, helping you to, live up to the goals that you set up for yourself, then please contact me and I would be happy to meet with you. In fact, right now, why don't I give you a place where you can schedule um, a 20-minute session with me to go over your goals, go over some of the things that you're working on in life that you may like to speak with a life coach about. And also, this can be for meditation as well, talking about your meditation. So just feel free to reach out. Here is a place where you can schedule an appointment with me. Now, another one is that the other programs we offer here at Vistara Circle, the online program. So you're just here now in the Saturday session. And then Sundays now we have in-person meetings in Oakland, California with Radha. She leads those meetings. The topic of her meeting, of course, they're very carefully socially distanced meetings. So she's cautious to make sure that that is in place. Tomorrow's meeting is about the link between environmental activism and spirituality. So if you're in Oakland, I invite you to join those meetings and see vistaracircle.com for more info about them. And then we have 2 more online meditations during the week, Tuesday evenings with Dada Nabanilananda and Wednesday mornings with Dada Vishwarupananda. Just please go to vistaracircle.com for you to get the links to register and to join these other programs. Okay? And I also like to mention that the music that you heard today, the kirtan, was from my album Serenade to the Universe. So this week, if you want to hear more kirtan, you can go to YouTube, go to Spotify, Bandcamp. You can purchase the album at cdbaby.com and just look up Serenade to the Universe by Tantra Thoughts and enjoy more kirtan. Now, one more announcement I'd like to make is about the new programs we're going to have here at Vistara Circle. So starting this coming Saturday, our online sessions are now going to be called Meditation and Personal Development. Maybe just online meditation and personal development. As you can see, the wording is still being developed. Online meditation and personal development sessions. So we are going to continue our meditations that we do. They will look more or less like the meditation that we had today. And they are going to be focused on topics of personal development. And so things like, how habits work, how to cultivate new habits, how to make better decisions, how to gain motivation when you're losing motivation in your projects or in different areas of your life. Several topics like that will have scientific data to back up the findings and the suggestions. Okay? This is going to be a new program that the way that it combines with our current program is that everybody is invited to those sessions. And after you attend 4 of those sessions, you will be able to join a level 2 online meditation group. The level 2 group is about personal transformation and societal transformation, where we focus on the yamas and niyamas. And after you complete those 4 sessions, then you are invited to level 3 of Vistara Circle, which is what we had been doing all along, which is now yoga philosophy. We spent this whole year and a half before, most of it, talking about esoteric topics in yoga philosophy, in Tantra. And those topics are very, very important. That's why we taught them, and they're very important to know, because that is really the spiritual knowledge to give you infinite happiness. But we're just kind of now, before immersing ourselves into those spiritual topics, we want to create a program where people gradually work up to that and start off with um, uh, sort of personal development, mental health, mental development, and then gradually going into a little bit of philosophy, say the yamas and niyamas, before then going into this world of yoga philosophy, which is level 3. Also, I'll tell you frankly, we are doing level 1 like this because we'd like to expand our audience. And so I found that not everybody is looking for these deep philosophical topics. People are more interested in something that they can learn now and start to apply now, more so than philosophy, which sometimes is, there's ways to apply it to your life for sure. But for somebody for somebody who's new to this, to meditation, to yoga, they might think that that's too abstract. So we want to talk about more concrete topics where people can develop themselves mentally, and start applying those teachings right away. So like, for example, these 15 Shilas was actually a good example. Sense of responsibility. Today, you can start being more responsible. Today, you can start feeling more responsible toward others, have an all-around sense of responsibility. So that's what we want to offer, is something that people can apply right away, and it can change their life. So I hope that if you have any questions about that, please let us know. And let us know. And if you have any comments on that, let me know. Send me a message, or you can also, right now, type in the chat, even though we're closing up, about this new direction. Okay, so I hope to see you next Saturday, where we'll start this new program, and the topic will be how habits work. Okay? All right. Are there any last comments before we close? So over here, Hitendra saying, remember to sign the sign-up sheet, especially those who have been here under 8 times, to sign the sheet. Okay, I believe Hitendra has a link for us. So please go ahead and do that if you've been here less than 8 times. Thank you, Hitendra. That sounds good. And last comments here on Facebook. Anushila said, thank you, namaskar. Thank you. Thank you, Anushila. I love you so much. It's so great to have you in our community. Thank you for being here. And then Lisa, Lajatita is my spiritual name. Okay. It was a beautiful session. Thank you so much. Look forward to being with you more. Stay inspired, every beautiful spirit. Thank you, Lisa. We really appreciate those warm words. Come by next week. We're going to be talking about how habits work. Okay, Layatita? Thank you. And Kayla says thank you. Thank you, Kayla. All right. So, namaskar, everybody. Look out for that sheet that Hitendra is posting. And I will see you next week. Enjoy life. Enjoy meditation. Enjoy the divine. Namaskar.